So welcome everyone to our August call for the Christian Peacebuilding Network. This month, we're going to be talking about peacebuilding and witness, because in my experience, there's often this conversation either behind the scenes or it's never actually articulated, where Christians who are involved in peacebuilding, of course, feel inclined to in some way collaborate towards peace with their neighbors. But many Christians at the same time feel, or in different ways, feel this strong impulse to say, how do we share our faith? How do we witness? What does it look like to be transparent, to share with other communities about who we are, about what we believe, about what we believe about Jesus and God's Spirit, and how God's Spirit's involved in all this peace-building work, etc. And so this month, we want to discuss from two different sides, those who are more inclined to include witness in some way as part of peace-building work, as well as on the other side, those who are more hesitant to engage in some sort of verbal witness as part of their peace-building work. And so there's three goals for this conversation. And we're going to have the group that is more inclined to some form of verbal witness as part of their peace-building work. They're going to break out and they're going to talk about what are some of the ethical considerations that they take into account, or that should be taken into account whenever we're engaging in some form of verbal witness as part of peace-building work. Because as I always hear, nobody wants there to be some sort of bait and switch kind of approach, that it's peace-building work so that we can get to certain kinds of conversations or witness about our faith in a certain way, because that feels disingenuous. But what are the ethical considerations that can really help us create a healthy, safe, positive, trust-building kind of context that can include verbal witness? What are those ethical considerations? On the other side, oftentimes for those that are more inclined, they look at those that are more hesitant to engage in witness, and they're saying, well, are you really being transparent about your faith? Do you in some way still being including witness in some kind of way? Does that matter? Is that in any way included? And so we're going to have those that are more hesitant to engage in verbal witness in some way, to talk about what is witness, how is that involved in peace building, and how is that powerful? So the power of witness from those that are on the more hesitant side. So the ultimate goal then is to try to build this bridge between those that are more inclined to witness and those that are more hesitant. We're sort of answering the questions that the other side is asking about us, which can create distrust and create some tensions between those two different sides. So does that make some sense, some clarity? And then of course you can discuss more in your small groups. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to set up the breakout rooms, and we're going to have Phil Wegler and Kendra D'Amico Lovins facilitate the group that is more inclined to include verbal witness and think about those ethical considerations. And then Daniel Munir and David Kudaba are going to facilitate the breakout room, considering what is witness and how is that powerful for those that are actually more on the hesitant side to engage in witness. And then we will bring the conversation back together. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and then we will come back together after our breakout rooms in about a half an hour. So welcome back from the breakout groups. Our conversation was absolutely fantastic. I anticipate, based on the incredible people in the other room as well, that it was a great conversation. So I'm looking forward to diving in. If one of the facilitators from room one, either Phil or Kendra, unless you designated someone else, would like to jump in and share some key insights that are coming up as you were talking about ethical considerations and witness and peace building.
Yep, I will jump in for us. It was a great conversation. I took lots of notes, so I will do my best to synthesize what was said. Feel free, anyone, to jump in if I missed something that you said or mischaracterized something that you said. But generally speaking, I think there was a movement from reforming our own thinking to reforming the thinking of the church about what we mean when we talk about witness and how that relates to peace building. I think we all agree that shalom is central to the gospel. It is the gospel. Reconciliation is the gospel, but it isn't agreed upon, I would say. And that is something that I'm like just gleaning from our conversation. We talked a lot about what our context and what's appropriate within our context and what is possible within our context. We had participants from Chennai, Uganda, Europe, North America, South Africa, Australia, and various other Southeast Asia. Australia is connected to Southeast Asia and other parts of other parts of the world as well. So we talked a lot about relationship and authenticity. There's working within trust and the boundaries of trust and relationship. I think we have all been on a journey of movement toward transparency in our context. How can we live authentically and be the witness? We talked a lot about letting our lives bear the witness and letting our responses be authentic. We talked about, really defining who we are as followers of Jesus and what it means to be the witness, and not just sharing the witness, but being the witness, being the peacemaker, being the source for peace in our context. And we had everyone from, the medical field to peace building work in its own essence. So I think that, of course, that will look different from place to place, context to context, and how that comes to bear and expresses. In terms of ethical considerations and boundaries, we spoke a lot about our own experiences and our tensions, but I think one of the main takeaways that seemed resonant for us as a group was that it's about being authentic and being ourselves, as we're people who have experienced reconciliation and transformation, and we have the privilege of living that out and letting it come to bear in various contexts, wherever we are. The beautiful gift of being peacemakers and understanding that as our identity is it does come to bear and will come to bear if we're bringing our full selves. Let's see, my notes here. I didn't get to share in my group, but I'll just add my own 2 cents to this. I think Zach touched on this, but he talked a lot about how trust is built on truth and transparency. We can feel like when one another are being transparent, and we can't have true relationship if we're not bringing ourselves authentically. So for me, when I'm both in spaces as well as facilitating and inviting others into a space that I'm invited to steward, wholeheartedness is the point, right? Like, how can we have peace at all if we can't bring our full selves? How can we have peace at all if we can't walk in transparency and authenticity? And so I think for me, my invitation is always inviting people to not leave parts of themselves at the door, but bring themselves into a space with transparency and with authenticity as they feel comfortable and as they feel safe. And I think safety was a big piece as well. How can we be bridge builders and mutually respecting, not just respecting, but appreciating and gleaning what each other have to bear? So anyone from my group, do you want to jump in and clarify or add if I've mischaracterized or missed anything?
I think you said it well. I was typing something there that I dropped in the text for everyone. I think the ethical issue we are dealing with here is the challenge is we need to find the voices of truth. In fact, I was beginning to think that shalom alone, shalom is a voice that needs to, on top of that, to have the voice of truth, the voice of mercy, and the voice of justice. Shalom alone cannot be complete without those others. I did drop something there that I missed to share. in the group. I dropped it in the message for everyone, something which we can discuss later on email. But ultimately, I think we need to get out of our boundaries that have made it impossible for us to love the world. I love what the brother just talked about, Brian, the brother that was with you when we just came out of the break sessions. He said that he was mad at these police officers and he told them, Jesus loves you. I think he should have told them, I love you, because that is what means to be a witness. It's not a mirroring effect. It's about us loving other folks. Thank you.
Yeah, I really love what you added in the chat as far as people having a seat at the table. I think the tension it's bringing up with me, and before maybe your group dives into it, I'd love to hear from the second room, but it's this tension between transparency and authenticity, which I really hear that your group is focusing on a lot, with the potential experiences of harm, of religious trauma that others have experienced. When maybe do those things come into tension, our own transparency and authenticity with triggers that other people have because of harm they've experienced? That seems like a really interesting line of inquiry. But before we go there, maybe that'll come up afterwards. If either David or Daniel, would you like to summarize some comments from room 2?
Yes, so I'll try my best. I'll read you what I have and then jump in, David and team 2. Definitely, I think we were the more traumatized group of the two. But let me say that we discussed the difference between proselytizing and just sharing your faith through a relationship. And we're talking about how proselytizing has a negative connotation, and how people can often hide evangelism or sharing their faith, and that leads to danger and manipulation. A lot of people were quite sensitive to this type of evangelism. A lot of people talked about how they set up different businesses or coffee shops or different kind of things with the intention of only sharing with people Jesus, instead of also enjoying people, enjoy people drink coffee. People were talking about how they've been brainwashed and maybe perhaps even abused regarding evangelism, that they experienced a Jesus burnout from sharing verbally all the time, everything that they did regarding Jesus, and hurting people in the process while evangelizing to them, and not loving people as people, but seeing them as a project. Another question that was asked is, who owns the truth? The people evangelizing think that they have attained the ultimate truth and authority on this matter, which is something that I think bothered people in our group. We have a few folks in our group that come from a more evangelistic organizations, which comes with strengths and weaknesses. But I think there was an expression of a weakness when the mission of the organization is only evangelizing Jesus with people verbally, etc. And I think the key sentence that this person said is, I want people to know Jesus for them and not for me. And that some people that are very heavily evangelized go through some kind of religious trauma. Hell, the topic of hell being a sticky point for a lot of people. A lot of people get turned off from Jesus, Christianity, when it comes to hell, and using fear as a means to manipulate and control. There was a guy who explained that he witnesses through tourism, particularly here in the Holy Land, sharing the history and reality today that we have here. We discussed about what does it actually mean to be a witness, and can your witness to the gospel be separate from the social, economic, and political context in which you live in? Being a witness is being a witness to the cross, following the steps of Jesus, and joining the liberation movement of the gospel that brings justice and peace. And that a lot of people who are witnessing the gospel, at least in this area of the world, we were saying, are not necessarily Christian. And many people who think that they are witnessing and sharing the gospel and they end up doing a lot of harm are actually Christians. So proselytizing, at least for our group, was not seen as a legitimate form of religious expression. To be a witness cannot be separated from the violence and conflict and the different settler colonial projects we find ourselves in. So the assumption, I think we disagreed with the assumption and the premise of what does it actually mean to be a witness? Is it only sharing with people verbally that Jesus existed, lived, and died on the cross? Yeah. Also about how we understand the gospel and how we understand witness. Sorry, guys, I'm just going through these notes, and some of these are screenshots of Brian's comments. We talked about the importance of the liberating value of the gospel story as an inspiration. And then we also talked about multiple ways of being a witness, and that some approaches are disrespectful culturally, and it's not actually witnessing Christ, but some kind of package that people offer and they end up suffering from. And how do we remove colonialism from witnessing as well, particularly in the colonized or neo-colonized countries? I think I got, please add, if I missed it, David, help me out here. If you wrote something that I didn't catch or misrepresented.
No, I think you covered a whole lot. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, I think that's, he landed on it. I guess we spent a lot of time on the problems that we see and have experienced of instrumentalization that comes with evangelism, and then thinking about what do we think about the gospel from a peace building lens? How does that shape what witness means to us and what we do on the world? And in that sense, the work that Daniel's doing and others are doing, all of us really on this call, that being in itself witness as a part of this larger gospel of liberation, healing, renewal, and nonviolence.
And maybe I can add, in our group, we even had quite a few people who were even hesitant to get on this call today because of the topic and the subject. But then they actually found the conversation open and inviting and inclusive, which helped people think through things and help us as a community think through this subject. So I think that was a massive positive for this meeting as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel and David, as well, Kendra and Philip, for sharing. This is really a fascinating kind of spectrum. I feel like this tension that we're holding, both sides, both rooms, it seemed as if there was really this value of authenticity and transparency. There's elements in which we're really redefining, like, what do we really mean by witness? What do we mean by the gospel? What do we mean by witness? And how are we sensitive to harm? And so I think those tensions. I think all of us, so many people on our side also said, well, we weren't sure which one to go into, because in some ways we see our very work as witness. And then I imagine, based on conversations I've had with others in the other group, that it's like, all that we're doing, we don't do the same sorts of activities that we did previously, but our very work, part of this liberating work towards God's just peace, is witness. And so these polarities are very difficult to kind of navigate because of this tension between authenticity and grappling with harm. So are there any sort of closing comments, things that stood out that anyone would like to share as we're about to wrap up here? I really appreciated the conversations. I hope that you all did as well. And I hope you can follow up and connect with each other more as we go into the future about how we can be transparent and authentic, and also attentive to harmful ways that our own community has engaged in witness, continues to engage in witness in various contexts, and how peace building can really be part of this witness to Jesus's liberating work towards a just peace. So thank you all so much.